And today, the focus is the fallout from talks between the U.S. President Donald Trump and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The talks came just after President Trump's announcement that he will be holding a meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on ending the war. We would be looking at that at the high-level talks, the reactions and other major reports attracting global attention. I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for joining us on What Now? President Volodymyr Zelensky appears to have come away empty-handed from a White House meeting after U.S. President Donald Trump indicated he was not ready to supply sought-after Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. President Zelensky seems desperate to ensure his nation's territorial security is not left vulnerable for further violation. President Zelensky believes using Tomahawks to strike at Russian oil and energy facilities would severely weaken Russia's economy and also weaken the government's resolve to continue fueling the war. When the U.S. president, the Ukrainian leader suggested his country would offer drones in exchange for the Tomahawks cruise missiles, prompting smiles from President Trump. President Trump described the weapons as a big deal, saying the U.S. needs the missiles for its own defense. He also said supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine could mean a further escalation in conflict, but added that discussions about sending them would continue.
Very good meeting, very cordial meeting. In my opinion, they should stop the war immediately. You go by the battle line wherever it is, otherwise it's too complicated. You'll never be able to figure it out. You stop at the battle line, and both sides should go home, go to their families, stop the killing, and that should be it. Stop right now at the battle line. I told that to President Zelensky. I told it to President Putin.
We trust United States. We trust President that he wants to finish this war, and it's difficult. It's very tough solution. It's understandable why, and for us it's essential, our land and our country, because it's a part of our independence, not just just meters or this is very important. It's about our sovereignty. So we think that that it was also difficult to manage in the situation in the Middle East, and if President was successful in it, I hope that he will manage this situation.
For an analysis of the meeting between both leaders and the upcoming meeting between President Trump and President Vladimir Putin, I'm joined now by global affairs analyst Ejike Okpa. He joins me from Dallas, Texas, in the United States of America. Good to have you join us, Mr. Ejike Okpa.
Thank you for having me. So
it's a non-committal response from President Trump. He neither said no or yes. He talks about, the idea that it will be looked at in the future. But let me just start by getting your reaction to that meeting when you compare it to the other meetings that have been had.
Well, it's an ongoing process, and what has happened is, Trump is going to meet with Putin, and he doesn't want to commit to Zelensky and say, I'm going to give you the Tomahawk. So he's probably holding that as an ace card in this game of, back and forth. So until he meets with Putin, then he will come back and say, okay, I will or I will not. So remember, this is a two-party or three-party negotiation. He just met with one, and then he's going to meet with the other. And at the end of it, he's going to be in a better position to offer a solution that will end the war. The whole goal is to end the war, but how do you end the war? These are two independent nations. You can't force yourself on them. You can't dictate to them what they're going to do. You just going to have to talk with them as to what do you really think that needs to happen, and that's what Trump is doing. And Zelensky obviously understands the complexity behind this process, and he's not going to push it because he's the person on the weaker side of things. And so let Trump meet with Putin, and let's see what that conversation is going to lead to, and then maybe the three parties will get together. Remember, the three haven't met. Maybe this will be the opportunity for them to now meet in a neutral zone, shake hands, look each other in the eye, and decide, hey, maybe this war needs to end, and this is how we're going to end it, with everybody winning and don't have any sense of loser-winner.
But in all of this, as both leaders met, one thing seems glaring. One man wants to be more armed to defend his nation, while the other man, which is President Trump, feels peace talks can help put arms afar. Where do you see the stronger drive? Is it towards peace or more war?
I think it's towards peace, because remember, this is not a war that America is waging with Russia, or all America is trying to do is to bring their goodwill to this situation and see if they can resolve it. Tomahawk that is asking is a sophisticated weapon, and there's no other country in the world that has that sort of fighting a helicopter. But the point is, let us see what Trump is going to do. He's got to be sensitive, to this stuff. And so Ukraine, being where Ukraine is, Ukraine don't have the resources, to go buy this stuff. This is not like buying a car. You walk into a showroom and say, give me that one, you pay for it. This is something that is very critical for their own success. And they need it from America, and America saying we got to be very cautious, we got to be very careful, in saying yes or no. Let's talk to the other party, because if Trump were to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do it, then who knows what Putin is going to do? That might make him just jump in and start doing something. So let him go talk to Putin, and then come back and see how he can get the two parties to a table where he is a witness to it, and then see what we're going to resolve it. Ukraine is in a weak position. The European nations that are backing him don't have the sort of resources, to make him stronger. He recognizes that. That's why he's always coming to the U.S. to see what the U.S. can do.
And interesting you mentioned Europe, because right now, France, is also having its own challenges. Their debt ratio to their GDP is now above 100%. I mean, the economy has been downgraded. Does he have the sort of support, that he would require from Europe to continue to prosecute this war? And is that a leverage for Russia?
Well, the way I describe the European support for Ukraine is like, when, in a soccer game, the spectators are there cheering, but they're not the ones playing the game, so they're giving him moral boost, but the moral boost don't win wars. What wins wars are weapons and strategy, and being able to sustain the aggression from the other side. He recognizes he's not going to be able to do it, and that's why he's going out to the only one nation in the world that can give him something that will make him even look formidable. Right now, Ukraine is not formidable. It's very unfortunate. Again, a case of neighbors not loving each other, but not even willing to tolerate each other. America cannot do what America wants to do. And so we can't push America, because, again, we have our own challenges. We have, about our government shutdown. So, Mr. President has to deal with Congress in order to resolve this matter. So that's just the nature of the world. It's never, a hunky-dory. It's never a bed of roses. Something pops up even in your own country. You have to deal with it, and then your neighbors are calling on you to come help them out. So to be independent means you have to also have the resources domestically to be able to deal with, internal aggression or regional aggression. And when any country surrenders that responsibility to somebody else, they're going to have to, be in line and wait until that's somebody else who's going to help them steps in.
Let's talk about the meeting President Trump will be holding with, or the talks he would be holding with President Putin. The Russian president has not shown any commitment either. He's been seen to be speaking from both sides of the mouth. When you look at that meeting, do you think that if he agrees on a peace deal with President Trump in Budapest, will it be a realistic commitment this time?
Well, I wish, I wish, I'm clairvoyant, or I wish I can see I have a magic wand. You never know. Again, remember, I have said this several times on this program. Ego is a factor in when you're dealing with presidents, whether they are small or big. And if that president feels that they have something that they can use to inflict damage on somebody else, oftentimes it takes a lot to persuade them to give up something. So, Putin knows what he has. Putin knows Russia is isolated. Putin knows he's one president in the world that has a very bad goodwill. and he's trying to do it because, again, he feels that why should you guys isolate me? Russia is supposed to be at the table for any major global issue. But so far, nobody goes to Russia for anything. So what they're doing is, like the child in a family who everybody overlooks and is always throwing tantrum and always going to want to poke anybody just to say, I'm here, pay attention to me. So let's see whether he will commit to, the meeting in Budapest. And if he does, is Zelensky going to be invited, or is it just going to be another Trump go see him, Trump comes back and talks to Zelensky, and then until the three people meet, this ain't we have no way of saying or thinking on how is it going to end. I think the most important thing is if Trump can convince the two gentlemen to meet somewhere, look each other in the eye and shake hands and say, hey, what are we fighting for? We are neighbors. Even when America goes away, we're still going to be neighbors. So it's not like I'm going to pick Ukraine in a truck and move it somewhere else. That is a permanent,
Mr. Ejikokpa, whilst I hear you, because it sounds very easy to say let's shake hands, because we're neighbors, but that shake of hands, whether it will happen at all, is coming with very serious conditions. And one of them has been the major sticking point, which is that Russia wants the submission and formal concession of territories by Ukraine to it. Do you really see any acceptable agreement coming up on this demand, which President Zelensky has rejected again and again? Can they find a way to agree on that sticking point?
Well, again, the shaking a hand is not going to be, it's not an impossible thing to do. It is just like it's going to take a lot of, effort and persuasions and understanding what, any side wants. If Russia comes in with a demand that is very unrealistic, the world will say, hey, no, that's not going to happen. And so, again, that's just before you go into any partnership or relationship, you got to throw up what you want. But if you insist on what you want, being the only way this is going to happen, that's when they say you are being intransigent. And so, Putin knows how to play this game. Remember, he's been in office longer than most American presidents. He's been there, since George Bush to Obama to Biden to Trump. He knows what he's doing, and he's looking for that president who's going to come in there, either agree to what he wants, and then he'll say, I told you, if you want to deal with your enemy, just have the resources to outstand, to outlast them. And that's what, Putin is doing. But again, I'm sure he's also tired. I'm sure Russians are saying, hey, can we end this stuff? But when you're in a country like Russia, where your opinion doesn't really matter, if you voice it, you become an enemy of the state, everybody's keeping quiet. And so Putin is the only one who can say anything about Russia. He doesn't have any Congress like U.S. where he can have, oppositions, jumping up and down and screaming at the president. Nobody screams at Putin, just like in China. So everybody that tries to compare America to China have to recognize that. We are the only country where we can say something about our president and they pay attention. Other countries, they don't have any choice. So, I'm hoping that there'll be a handshake. And when that happens, I have no magic wand of saying when it will, but I think it will be necessary for them to be in the same room and breathe the same air and look at each other and say, hey, can we get along? Can we get along? That's a phrase that is common in any situation that you have a conflict.
Global Affairs Analyst Mr. Ejikokpa will put you on hold now as we go on break. When we return, we will continue this conversation with you. Stay with us, everyone. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching What Now? We've been speaking with Global Affairs Analyst Ejikokpa on the meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky and the upcoming meeting between President Trump and President Putin. Thank you so much for staying with us, Ejikokpa.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get back to President Zelensky. Right now, he needs a weapon to prosecute this war, even before the peace talks. Ukraine is suffering an assault from Russia on the ground, and territories are being taken. Where does Ukraine go to find support in terms of weapon, and how far-reaching can Europe render that support?
I don't know where he can go. Is he going to go to North Korea or China or the European, NATO? NATO doesn't really have a whole lot without American support. I think Sweden and Finland recently came out and said they're going to buy some American weapon and they're going to spend certain amount of money. But what are they buying? It's not just buying the weapon. You want to buy a weapon that is effective, that can actually give you a chance of coming out victorious. So America still holds its card in this game, and we're hoping that something happens that will make the parties to this conflict come to terms and say, oh, it's not worth it. Or America decide to say, hey, well, I'm going to give you what you need. And now if America does that, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be more escalation, because Russia is going to feel all bets are off. Let me go in and do what I do before America. Because again, sending you the weapon, it don't automatically start to use it. You have to learn how to use that weapon. Remember when Biden was there, he promised them some weapon, but he still said he's going to take some training in order to use. These things are very sophisticated, weapon systems, and it's not something that you can just overnight learn how to do it. So, and when you give it somebody that sort of resource, you want them to be successful, not just giving them for the sake of giving it to them. So, I'm an optimistic person when it comes to conflict, that, when people see what certain things are happening, they're just going to say, what, let's end this stuff. There's so much, damage is already, happened. So many people have died. Russia also, suffered some killings, but they're not admitting it, because, again, who's gonna come and say this is the number of people that have died in Russia? Putin is making it look like he's the one winning, but he too is suffering. But again, being who he is the head, the pig at the head of the trough. So he decides what everybody else down the trough gets, and everybody down the trough is quiet, because you say anything against Putin, guess what? You're going to come disappearing, or they send you to Siberia. You know the story of Siberia. That's where they commit, a whole bunch of dissidents in Russia, or those who oppose the leadership in Kremlin. So again, the world is watching this. China ain't going to do anything, because China don't have what it takes.
No doubt that Russia seems to have controlled the narrative, a huge part of this narrative when it comes to the war. But you talked about Russian suffering. One of the reasons that President Zelensky, or the major reason President Zelensky wants this weapon, is to attack Russian oil facilities and weaken its economy. But President Trump has an interesting take, and he has spoken to Europe. Stop buying oil from Russia, and he has also said that to India. And that way you weaken its economy. And I just want to get your reaction to that, because there are lots of people who think that's the ideal thing to do.
Well, it's a pipeline, and that pipeline goes through, Ukraine to find its way to the Western European. Germany depends a whole lot on the crude and the gas, from Russia, and so many. And then India is, excuse my expression or use of this, was a rogue nation. They're gonna go behind and get whatever they want. So until the people that are fueling, the resources of Russia, despite sanctions, until they do it. But if they do it, it's going to be at their own expense. They're going to suffer. So if Germany said, okay, we're going to shut off buying Russian gas and crude, where would they get it immediately? So right now, they are all dependent. So a lot of these European countries are depending on the Russian gas. And who knows what other thing Russia has on them, that, hey, if you cut me off, I'm going to do this to you. Because it's a complex situation. The world trade relationship is very complex. And you can see that even when you put the most severe sanction you think is going to, make somebody, think twice, they still get around it. Because there are, between, the supplier and the buyer, are so many channels people can divert things and still end up where you think you shouldn't go. So Ukraine knows this is, and Russia, we've been given sanctions on Russia for decades, but look at where they are. But internally, a lot of Russians are suffering. But since you don't have a media coverage that will go in there and do that story, or even Russians themselves coming out and say, this is what we are going through, we don't know. Just like the case of North Korea. Who knows what's going on in North Korea? Occasionally, you see some nice things being popular, but a lot of people there just cannot say what the true situation is. And Putin again has a tight control on the country. People talk about China. I don't think there's any nation like Russia where the president, like I said, the pig at the head of the trough, he controls what anybody down the trough gets. Whether you like it or not. And if you oppose him, you oppose him. Even if you oppose him outside of Russia, there are people that are going to go do the dirty job for him. That's just, remember, he was a Secret Service guy before he got to president, so he knows how to twist.
Well, those are a lot of allegations that we cannot substantiate, even though we know that people have spoken to that.
It's out there. It's out there. It's out there. Right. It's not an allegation. It's actually a fact. What I'm just saying, how many Russian media do you have coming out and reporting on the opposition?
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to have your take on these issues. Global Affairs Analyst, Ejike Okpa. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. We're staying in the U.S., where Republican